Hey guys, it's your best fight friends. Okay. I'm Rachel. That's Kelsey. Let's talk about, you wrote a piece about Dustin Poirier and that the stats actually favor the diamond. Whoa. So if you were going to moneyball this, right? Like if you were going to...
Whoa. I'm not saying that. I am...
No, but you are saying if you just look at the paper, at just the stats, a majority of the stats favor Poirier over Conor.
I'm saying that if you look at the basic UFC stats that they provide, and there are many of those stats, actually, if you just look at statistics, favor Dustin Poirier. He's equal, at least statistically, to Conor striking, minus the knockouts, and he's a better grappler. And he's a better submission. He goes for more submissions. He lands more submissions. So just judging by that alone, if you look at that, you're like, hey, this guy statistically has a pretty good shot has a pretty good opportunity in this fight.
Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of people might go into this fight, obviously Conor McGregor is favored. I think the last odds I saw on that, it wasn't a huge,
yeah, it's not going to be like in boxing where he's minus 10,000 or whatever.
Right. But he's favored over Dustin. But I just thought it was really interesting that a good chunk of the statistics favor Poirier.
At least
and I know that Poirier is also very motivated. He's very focused.
He's also just a really good fighter.
The last time I saw him fight, he looked really... So I'm not convinced that this is going to be just a cakewalk.
Yeah, I would guess.
And I would say defeating him within 60 seconds.
I think if that's your mindset,
sounds like you're
setting yourself up for disappointment.
A cakewalk,
I don't think that's going to happen. He talked about, one of the things Dana White said was, oh, well, look what he did to Cowboy Cerrone. Yeah, that's great, but this is not Cowboy Cerrone. Cowboy Cerrone is not at the same level right now in his career as Dustin Poirier is right now. Dustin Poirier is one of the easily top 2 or 3 contenders in a stacked lightweight division. I mean, I think back to his win over Dan Hooker over the summer. Maybe, arguably the best fight that I saw last year. I loved watching that fight, and part of it was how Poirier was able to overcome a very motivated, a very good fighter in Hooker in a fight that, when you have that ability to be in a difficult situation and still come back and love every second of it like he did in that fight, man, that guy, you don't want to fight that guy. That guy's going to give you all the tough rounds he can muster. So I don't think it's going to be 60 seconds. I think it's going to be a good fight. I still favor Conor to win the fight, but I don't think anybody should look past Dustin Poirier. But statistically, so what I'm getting at, Rachel, is when you said statistically, right? You've said Moneyball. Well, those are way more advanced statistics than they have at UFC stats. Now, there are people out there in the MMA community that do this kind of advanced statistical analysis. I don't know. I mean, I haven't gotten that far into that fun stuff yet. I will say that Conor McGregor has a lot more knockouts. He has a lot more power. He seems to be able to run people into his punches and strikes and knock them out a lot more than Poirier. So where statistically they're pretty even, and they're even close to the same size. They're both southpaws. They both have a similar reach. About Conor, if Conor connects, he puts your lights out.
So the thing is how much weight you put into these stats.
Right.
When I read, I'm like, oh, it kind of that's interesting.
It's
but
a conversation.
Is it that interesting, Rachel? Does it really mean anything?
I will say that sometimes you could look at stats and you could watch, this veteran fighter versus this, for instance, Hamza Chimaev. His stats are going to be so absurdly one-sided because he hasn't fought at the same level as maybe...
Right, it's like looking at a hitter in baseball after the first week of the season.
Maybe even a guy, well, this guy's been in AAA, but this guy's been hitting the big leagues. So I would say that Poirier and McGregor have both been in the big leagues for long enough to where statistically, I think they are reasonable.
When you're comparing them. Yeah. I find it interesting, too, because I don't believe we have this kind of stat work over in boxing.
It's definitely...
Or it's
there's
not
different stats. We have CompuBox that does their statistics.
Right.
Now, I don't exactly, and I haven't
Now,
really looked into how
there's
the
less
UFC...
going on in boxing, right? There's not going to be grappling.
Yeah,
There's not going to be submissions. There's not going to be... So I guess we do.
I don't know
it's
how
just always
the UFC...
been a part of my boxing, watching.
For us to learn.
Knockouts, punches. Okay, so I take that back.
Well, something for us to learn, though, is how does the UFC... How do they get their stats at UFC Stats? I know how CompuWalk works. You have 3 human beings sitting around hitting buttons. Yeah, watching it, and like 2 of the 3 have to hit the same button. Anyway, is that how it works in UFC? I have no idea. I haven't looked into this. We take statistics for granted. Sometimes in boxing, we take CompuBox statistics for granted. CompuBox was never designed in boxing to give you the actual number. It was designed to give you a feel for what the numbers were.
Yeah.
So maybe the UFC has a similar system. I have no idea.
Is there anything else we wanted to talk about in regards to this? Dustin and Conor.
Dustin and Conor, what a great way to start the new year.
That's what you wanted to say?
I think that's the linchpin. Kelsey Linchpin McCarson. I want to be called Kelsey Cobra Kai McCarson. Eagle Fang.